as new details continue to emerge about the suspect in last week's murder of the United Healthcare CEO in Midtown Manhattan. Investigators have made a fingerprint match, they say, between the suspected killer, Luigi Mangione, and evidence near the crime scene in New York City. That new information released not too long ago by New York City's police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, saying the fingerprints were found on a snack bar wrapper and a water bottle purchased at a nearby coffee shop while the gunman awaited his target. Tisch also added that the gun found on Mangione matched the shell casings found at the site of the shooting. Mangione is being held under maximum security at the State Correctional Institute in Huntington, Pennsylvania. We're told placed in a cell by himself. A lot to discuss here, so I do want to bring in Toby Braun, founder of American Special Investigative Group and an expert in threat intelligence and executive protection. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Well, first off, I do want to talk about the case overall, as we've seen a lot of information come out over the past week, pretty much on an hourly basis, it seems. What has stood out to you overall the most as the information, the new details have come out?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, it was very clear to me from day one of seeing the videos and seeing the information that was out there that law enforcement was dealing with an amateur versus a professional hitman, which is some of the other information that was it's been previously put out there. Everything from this guy's tactics to the fact that he had issues using a firearm and clearing the malfunctions, to his movements, to the fact that he showed his face as many times as he did. And overall, this guy's behavior, it was very clear to me that we're dealing with an amateur, and obviously now a lot of new developments here. And I think this case points on so many different things, and I'm seeing some reports now, or a lot of reports actually, which is quite concerning, that this guy's being called the hero by some, which I think also addresses the fact that there may be a greater anger that patients may have towards the healthcare insurance industry.
And it does seem as though the attack had to have been very well planned in advance, probably for quite a while. And I want to get your take as an expert there. Is that how it appears to you as you look at this as a whole?
Absolutely. I think this guy's been planning this for a long time, not just going based on the manifesto that he's published, but you could see him in the video. He was doing surveillance at the location prior to that. He was clearly planning it by using the ghost gun that he has made ahead of time. Putting those weapons together takes some time, getting the parts together, and really to be able to utilize that gun and pull it off effectively. All that would have taken a significant amount of time. Also due to the fact that just the sheer planning of getting to New York City, using the fake IDs, using the cash, having all those things at hand, having a backpack with a change of clothes in it, all that shows me that this was definitely a premeditated attack versus something that happened in the spur of the moment.
And Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO who was killed in this shooting 1 week ago, we are told by some of the family members that it appears he may have received threats prior to all of this happening. What is kind of the standard protocol, I guess, when you have a big CEO like this, or really anyone in a company that is receiving threats and is still, going around? He was going to a meeting there in New York City. So what is the standard protocol? Is there one?
Josh, it's one of the things that it really baffles me that this CEO didn't have an adequate detail with him, considering the threats that were out there. It's really bizarre to me. I'm not quite sure who was in charge of his security currently. I'm not sure who on his staff was responsible for that. But the fact that he was unprotected without any detail is absolutely, it should have never have happened. Generally speaking, the protocol, if an individual like that receives threats, or even beforehand, because he is an individual at risk, considering his positions and considering the amount of threats that are just out there, not only for him but to CEOs in the healthcare health insurance industry. And it just required a significant detail, threat intelligence, which a lot of times threat intelligence can prevent a tragedy from the first place by identifying these bad actors and then upping security when it's needed. and then really having an effective team in place. And when we talk about security, we talk about, physical security. For most people, it's kind of like the same thing, but there's so many different layers to it. And really having an adequate executive protection team of individuals that are trained, experienced, that are armed, because in this situation, if they wouldn't have been armed, they would have probably been useless. And really having those effective measures in place, having that planning, having the advanced work done, where you have now your team's going out there ahead of time to know where the principal is going. Having 360 security, which in this case would have been crucial to identify the attacker. All those things were clearly not done. I mean, he was there by himself, and it's really it's bizarre to me that this guy was unguarded, and clearly, this was largely a result of this tragedy from being unable to happen.
And what you're looking at here on your screen is actually video from Altoona, Pennsylvania. That is the McDonald's where he was taken into custody. Can you tell me about some of the methods that law enforcement used amid this investigation that went on for several days prior to the arrest? Now, it sounds like people at that McDonald's, and that's some of the surveillance there, actually recognized the suspect. But I imagine that the work by law enforcement is what was able to tie the suspect to the crime.
Sure, and back to my original note that anybody who's calling this guy a hero, the real heroes in this case are the NYPD detectives. I know have a lot of friends and former colleagues that are NYPD detectives. It's one of the greatest law enforcement agencies that we have in the country. So hats off to those individuals. Those are the real heroes. The individuals at the McDonald's who called it in, those guys are the heroes. The rookie police officer in that town in Pennsylvania who walked in the establishment, recognized him. Again, those are all the real heroes in the story. Now, as far as the methods utilized, well, first and foremost, it was, you have New York City. It's one of our American cities that has the most amount of surveillance equipment that you could possibly think of. Facial recognition cameras. It's really hard to go anywhere in New York City and not be under video surveillance. And that really drastically helped these detectives in not only identifying this individual ultimately, but also tracking his movements and tracking him from the crime scene to Central Park, and then subsequently to the later on locations that he visited. But really, it comes down to using technology and old school detective work that these homicide detectives utilized to ultimately working on identifying this individual, and now also the detectives that are working on putting together the pieces to ultimately secure a prosecution for the subject. You mentioned the evidence that was out there, the fingerprints that were found on the wrapper and the water bottle. The gun was identified in NYPD crime lab. From what I've learned today, I had just made a discovery that the ballistics of the firearm that was recovered and the shell casings on the ground is in fact a 100% match. So again, it's really overall this comprehensive approach of teamwork, of solid law enforcement work that I'm very confident in will ultimately lead to this guy's conviction.
And I do have to ask, kind of going in reverse a little bit to something that we were just discussing. A lot of people do hear a story like this, and maybe they are a CEO or someone with their company that is fairly high up, and there was a lot of concern expressed after this did happen. So I wanted to get your take as far as what people can do to kind of make sure that they are safe in a situation like this. And this goes back to talking about the security that you were discussing a short time ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all comes down to just having a security plan in place, having your threat intelligence in place to identify what are the risk factors, getting an overall plan put in place to identify what threats am I facing, and then having an expert come in and identify the solutions necessary to mitigate those risk factors. And it's really, unfortunately, we live in a day and age where these attacks, have happened in the past. They're going to continue to happen again, which is also concerning because now we have the risk of copycat attacks, and really we have to take security more seriously. And I think this is a tragic situation that really highlights the fact that security is a necessity. It's not just a burden. It's not just an expense. It's really a necessity. And investing in the right security will save lives. Again, it really comes down to having that overall threat assessment done, doing a threat intelligence, and then having experts come in to identify procedures that the individual needs in order to be protected.
And I have to ask my final question here. As far as questions that you still have that you hope will be answered soon, obviously there's still a lot of questions. This is only a week into the investigation, but what question or maybe questions do you have that you hope will be answered soon?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall it comes back down to one of the questions I had is why was this individual unprotected, and then secondly, it's the suspect in this case here. It's really not your typical suspect, right? I mean, this guy is Ivy League educated. He came from a good family, to what we're learning. He didn't have any priors to what it appears. And it's really, I think one of the questions that a lot of people are asking themselves is why this guy, right? What happened there, and what happened in his head where he suddenly turned and decided to premeditate this attack. There's a lot of speculation out there now that he's some understanding he had chronic back pain and he could have been on some kind of medications, that he stopped taking the medications that have something to do with it, or what happened in his life where he decided to go out there and plan this attack. And it seems like also that this is the attack on Brian Thompson wasn't the only attack that he had planned. It seems like that he had other attacks planned, and so I think really a question that the nation right now is asking, is why did this all happen, and what is and again it comes back to my original point. It really also raises greater awareness of this anger that patients seem to have, and I think that's something that needs to be looked into further as well.
All right, Toby Braun, thank you so much for taking the time to join us as always to help break down a very involved subject here. Anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
No, I think it comes down to is, this suspect would not be in custody if it wasn't for a civilian in a common location in McDonald's that saw something and said something. And I think it's so important in our day and age as Americans. We have to stick together. If you see something, say something, and it can make our country a whole lot safer, because law enforcement is thin. There's only so many resources out there, and it's really oftentimes it comes down to responsible citizens to step up when their time is being called. And then secondly, it's maintain vigilance, right? We live in a day and age where we're all on our phone and we're all just distracted by everything that's around us. Maintain that situational awareness, maintain that 360 security, and really be vigilant what's out there, because unfortunately, again, threats are out there. And the only way we can prevent that is if we're vigilant, and if we take the proper precautions to prevent any risks and mitigate those factors. So.
All right, Toby, thank you again for taking the time to be here with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Josh.